Good evening, everybody. How are we this evening? I'm super excited tonight. And guess what? I'm going to have a drink tonight. I've been really looking forward to this because I've been speaking to the guys that make it. It's called Days. And this is actually the first one that I'm going to try. So I'm gonna have this tonight, and steady on, Delta Lima, steady on. Don't jump the gun just yet, mate. Evening, chaps. He's saying I haven't even introduced our guest. I haven't even opened my beer. Do you want to know who we've got on? Some people know who we've got on, and I'm really excited to bring him on. Yeah, I'm open this in a minute. I'll wait for a second. I'll tell you why I'm celebrating though, because after months in the planning, today I celebrated the official opening, and it seemed quite nice that it happened today as well. Ironically, on the 1st of April, I managed to officially open Force Forward HQ. So you might have seen the pictures or the video earlier on. It's a super cool place environment that I've got it to base it. Ops base for Force Forward. So I'm going to have a little drink with my guest tonight, who is someone that I first met in 1989. I had just turned 18. He was still 17, and do you know what? I could introduce him with many a tale of when we got into bother, but it's easiest to just let him talk about his tunes and talk about stuff, because my intro would be too long. I was 18. He was 17. We met at West Drayton when we were both going through our trade training to become scopies, and we developed a friendship that would end up getting us both into a lot of trouble for so many different reasons. And do you know what? I don't regret one fucking minute of it at all. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Mr. Paul Blades. Come on in, my good friend. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well.
Sorry? I've got to say congratulations, by the way. 40 days on the juice, and you look fantastic, mate. You look amazing. So bravo for that. Well done. Well done.
And thank you very much. So this is deserved tonight. I think this is well deserved. So I'm opening it up. Cheers. Cheers.
All the best. Cheers.
Yeah. Should we see who we've got in the house tonight before we crack on?
I reckon there's about 6 people. That includes me and you.
Says we've got 8 so far. The only thing with this is I can't see who we've got on. We've got Mr. Delta Mike Lima, who said he says evening. So I'll put this up and you can tell me what he means, because I've got no clue.
Fabio?
Yeah.
All right, that was a nickname I gave myself when I was trying to become a DJ, which failed miserably. And at Mount Kent, that we'll talk about later on, there was little scribbles in Chinograph with Fabio. But it also, it meant something completely different, because do you remember there was like a muscly guy with long blonde hair that called himself Fabio?
Yeah.
And there was another DJ, very famous, Fabio and Groove Rider, the two of them. So I'd sort of like that DJ, and of course everybody went, no, you're going for that blonde look, muscly guy, which it wasn't. But so that was, and maybe at Mount Kent,
that nickname.
No, it did stick at all. As you can see, there's not much blonde hair, and there's certainly no muscles. So,
well, look, we have another one of our good friends is on tonight. He's been complimentary as ever as Dan, even Mr.
I always liked the other Dan Pierce. I always liked the other one. No, it was obviously I bumped into Dan last year or so. It was nice to see Dan under unfortunate circumstances, but it was nice to see Dan. So, but
I got up with him the other week. Actually, we had a good natter.
Yeah,
yeah, he was on form. He said he'd be tuning in when you were on.
I'm sure. Well, he sent me a message as well to say that he was going to rip me and he was looking forward to this. So,
brilliant. Oh, look, Mr. Barlow's on as well with all the compliments under the day. Lantern deck. Oh dear. Right, mate. Shall we crack on?
Yeah, we can do. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Oh, because I'm excited about this. And so you know the deal with afterwards. That I kind of jump onto Instagram. The whole reason that I want this to become like a radio station where I can actually play the music, but I'll jump on Instagram afterwards and play a couple of these songs in the hope that they don't shut it down. But I'll choose them.
Yeah.
And you can probably take a guess at which ones I play. I might not even play the ones that you talk about tonight. Who knows?
Honestly, choosing 4 or 5 songs out of sort of that period it's difficult. It's difficult, and even the songs that I've chosen tonight, they're not. There's not many that are for a particular reason. It's sort of like the whole era. I could have chosen millions, literally millions. Who's dick, by the way, me or you?
I don't think I want to know. I don't think I want to know. He'll tell us. I'm sure he'll tell us. So kick us off then.
With what? What would you like me to start with?
Oh, with Mel and Kim. Respectable.
It's very similar to Hammy's story when Hammy did the podcast. I've enjoyed all the podcasts so far, and I've been able to sort of pick from each of those. But Mel and Kim, it was out in 1987, but it's the 80s. It's that decade of the 80s. And at the start of that decade, I was 7 years old. 1980, I'm 7. Yeah. 1989, I'm 17, and I'm joining the Air Force. I'm joining the Air Force, and I was 17 and 1 month when I joined the Air Force. So I was 17 in September, and I joined in October the 30th.
Right.
And I didn't get my choice. I always wanted to be aircraft mechanic, not aircraft tech. I wasn't clever enough for aircraft tech, but aircraft mech. I wanted to work on Harriers. Right.
So what happened then?
If you remember, they only did so many courses for things like technicians. And the CIO told me, you've missed the course, choose something else. Okay. The reason I knew about Trade Group 12 is, do you remember Mike Piers that was from Middlesbrough?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You might not want me to say this, but he used to be an air cadet and I was an air cadet. And Mike had come back when he joined the RAF to give a speech about what he was doing. And all he said was aerospace systems operator. And I thought, I'm having that. That sounds fantastic. Yeah. So I went back down and I think at the time there was obviously a shortage of Scorpies because they were taking anybody. It's, and you could see that by the riffraff that was coming. Yeah, exactly. And they first offered me YTS because at the time we were doing all the white, and I said, no, I'm not interested. I don't want YTS. And then the following week I got a letter that said, you're going to Swinderby. So So from when I joined until my next birthday, that was free of charge because your contract with the Air Force didn't start until you were 18. So, but I never wanted to be a Scorpio. I wanted to work on planes, and unfortunately that didn't happen.
Do you remember what else you had to pay for the Queen as well? Because I was similar. I joined at 17 and I did 16 days. But I ended up doing 23 days for the Queen because every day that you did before your 18th birthday, you had to pay back at the end of your service. But there was another set of days that you always had to pay back. If you were unlucky enough to, how do we say, serve some time in some sort of detention, shall we say, you had to pay that back as well. And I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to have 7 days of those. So I ended up doing 23 days for the Queen at the end. So there you go.
I never got into trouble with the police when I was in the Air Force. Never actually physically. I was interviewed by them, but I was never actually formally in trouble with the police. And I only got charged 4 times while I was in the Air Force.
Well, I remember one time I got involved quite heavily with the police and had to go and see some old woman and pay her 150 quid for a fence that I'd gone through with Ewan Osborne. And we were huckled by the police for that. And somebody managed to worm their way out of it, if you recall.
I also remember a certain clothing guy ran through the gates with if I remember correctly, with very little clothes on that night. We'd all been drinking down there, if you recall that night. But yeah, we fell through that and we had to go back and apologise.
No, not we. I ended up going back to apologise with Oz. You were nowhere to be seen.
I was very, very good at that, taking the side.
Yeah, you were. Where's Bladesy? He's gone.
And I think my charges in the Air Force were ridiculous. The ones that and they're very similar. Again, taking something from Steve's podcast, he got into trouble for sleeping in. 3 of my 4 charges were for sleeping in.
Yeah, most of mine were.
The first one was with Sergeant Dot Haynes when I got caught in
the WAF block.
The WAF block. and I walked into the rugby club, the Donkey Swamp Bar, and I went in. I've just been charged for being, and everyone's like, "Way!" There's drinks flying, and yeah.
So it's that kind of era that's where the Mel and Kim comes from.
It does. The 80s for me was great. It was. I could have chosen a millions of songs for them, but I do like a bit of Mel and Kim. I do like that song. It does get me on the dance floor even now. The embarrassment of my kids. So
it is one of them. It's like, do you know, it's funny because I had this conversation with Karen as well. I've always kind of gone, not an 80s fan, not really an 80s fan. And I remember digging out like a whole load of my vinyl. I never threw out any vinyl. I've continued to buy it. In fact, and we went through a whole load of vinyl. And she was like, if you don't like 80s music, what's this? This isn't mine. She's thrown me like Deacon Blue albums. She's thrown me Run. She's thrown me Love and Money. She's thrown me Hue and Cry. And she's like, 80s, Simple Minds, 80s. And I'm like, oh yeah, I suppose I do like some 80s music. So
all them bands that you've just mentioned, I love. My old man used to work in Saudi Arabia, and he used to come back with all the cassettes. And they were bootlegged, but it was the first time I heard the album Once Upon a Time, Simple Minds, Raintown Deacon Blue, which they're fabulous out. And Raintown Deacon Blue got me through the 4 months down the Falklands. That was one of the albums that I used to go back and listen to quite a lot.
Still love it. I'd still love it. No, it's an absolute class. That really is absolutely brilliant. Yeah. What are some of your early memories of that time of kind of joining up?
So so Swinderby, okay.
Yeah.
I've got 2 stories here. So Wednesday we went. So my mum, dad waved me off at the train station. Wednesday. I was back home on the Saturday. They were expecting me to go off and do 6. Obviously, we were given the weekend off, so I'd literally been in the Air Force for 3 days and then back.
Yeah.
Week 4 at Swinderby, you may recall, was MFT, military field training, right? When we all had to sleep out, get gassed. I indeed walking across a field. And it was the old SLRs, and I was playing with the safety catch. And I allegedly tripped. I didn't. I was squeezing the trigger. And bang, it went off. Everybody drops. Everybody hits the deck. The next day, I'm up in front of the squadron leader. And she was no bigger than Dot Haynes, this squadron leader. And she asks me who I am, what my service number is, and what trade I'm going to be in. she told me if I wasn't going to be Trade Group 12 Aerospace, I would have been kicked out the Air Force. The fact was there was a shortage of Scopies, and she was like, we've got to. So my career was nearly over in 4 weeks of being in the Air Force because of that. And so can you imagine if I had been an aircraft mechanic? I would probably never have been one anyway, because if I'd have done that, it would have been over and done with. And yeah,
that's something that we have in common, because although this happened with me, I guess ND, for any, I mean, I think everybody watching knows exactly what ND is, but for anybody that's maybe not military, that does watch this, negligent discharge, right, is what ND stands for. And technically a negligent discharge is a round that is let off that is not under the control of the person that is holding the rifle. And what many people don't know, I know one person that will know this, and anybody that's got this far in the book, there is a little bit that is inspired by an occasion that I had in the range. I don't know if you remember, and we all had agreed that we would run, and that we would. It was when we had to, we were given the command, we had to get down into the prone position really quick, and I was running. When they shouted, I had kind of got a little bit behind, and so I launched myself at the. I was about 10 meters shy of the pits that we had to kind of get down in, and I launched myself, and I actually tried to get into the position where I was able to, whilst I was in midair, and I let a round off before I had even hit the ground, but I was in almost in the prone position midair. And of course, what happened was when it went off, it went in my shoulder, and because I didn't have any control, it went up in the air. And because I was coming down whilst it went up, the round caught the wooden post that was right in.
I was there that day.
Stop!
I remember that day. Because there was another incident where there was a round that had a crack in it, and they had to get new rounds and mess around with that. But I used to love going to that range because it was on Aberdeen Beach, and they used to put you on the posts on the beach, and you just sat watching people on the beach mucking around, and you weren't bothered about what was going on behind.
Here's a question for you: what's the most bizarre thing that you did whilst you were at the range?
I know what you're getting at, but I never did that. I know exactly what you're getting at, but I wasn't the ones that did that.
Not in the North Flag, no?
No, I know. I think I know one of the Scottish guys that did do that, but it certainly wasn't me. Certainly wasn't me. There's probably still DNA evidence there if the range is still there. So,
right. Listen, before we move on to your next song, there's a couple of people on.
There's Haley. Hi, Haley.
Hi, Haley. We've also got Mo's having none of it. He's saying, who wasn't interviewed by the police at Buchan?
I'm not saying I wasn't interviewed. All I'm saying is I was never formally in trouble with the police. And don't forget that I used to live next door to the police as well, right?
You did. Yeah, you did, didn't you?
Yeah, which was quite strategic, I think.
Yeah. What was the most interesting thing you did in the house whilst living next door to the police?
There was a lot. Don't forget, before I was married to a customs officer, so there was a lot of things that went on in there. So,
should we move on to the next song?
Let's move on to trade training at RAF West Drayton, shall we?
Oh dear.
Hi, Beverly.
We've got Bevs on. Mr. Back in the house.
Supporting. We were here.
I know, look. Oh my lord, look who else we've got on.
Man, goodness me, Tracy. A-Watch.
Here we go. Hello.
What's around?
Gary Glitter, still more socially accepted than military police. Yeah. Yes. Here.
Do you remember? I'm jumping forward here. Do you ever remember the snowball fight that we had with the RAF police? When we moved from.
I remember a food fight.
Sorry?
I remember a food fight.
There was a snowball fight.
I do remember a snowball fight, yes.
And it was literally the RAF police against everybody else, and they got absolutely mullered by all of us. I think every Scopy who wasn't working was out. Spike.
Here we go. Yes, I do remember that. Yeah, I have quite a few
I
memories.
nominate that you get Andy Holmes on next, because I can only imagine he'll trump every single story that anybody has.
How's about it, Andy Holmes? Are you up for it?
He is. He's got to have more stories than anybody else.
Listen, I'd love to have him on. We'll speak to him, see what he says.
Obviously, so I joined up as a 17-year-old. Then I went to trade training at West Drayton. And obviously, at that time, I'm still only 17 and 3 months. And the first person I meet is you. And you were. I just remember I don't remember who else was on your course, but I just remember the three of you. There was Chris Hills, yourself, and Pat Penn.
Yeah, there was also the what's his name, Malwini.
Okay, all I remember about your course was you three, because you were in the 6-man room that was next to ours.
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
And at Swinderby, if you remember, at Swinderby, you had a green ID card and an orange ID card, which meant you were over or under 18. So at Swinderby, I didn't drink even before I joined the Air Force. Of course, I was too young. As soon as I got to West Drayton, that's when I started to drink.
Yeah.
That's when I started to drink.
Yeah. Look who else. He was on that course. Oz Smith. You remember Oz Smith?
I do, yes. I do now. Obviously,
he was my senior man, and I caused him so many problems. I was a little shit. And he was always getting it in the neck for us. I remember, to start with, he was always standing up for us and going, I'll sort them out, leave it with me. And then eventually he was like, you boys, you're on your own. you're a pair of idiots.
Let me tell you how serious Trade Group 12 was with its trade training, right? My instructors were Di Dempsey and Mal O'May, right?
Yeah.
It was an absolute comedy show for the 8 weeks that we did trade training, right? The final exam, they literally did it for us. And what I mean by that is, if you didn't know the answer to a question, and I was telling Mo this, so you had multiple choice, A, B, C, D. And if you put Corporal, I don't know what this is, and if the answer was B, stop being a bastard. A was, I can't tell you what they used for C, because obviously and that's how they got us through the trade training final exam, is they actually helped us by being, I don't think you could do it now with being politically correct and all that, but I tell you what, one of the most memorable stories I had there is when we did the Watersham Neatishead trip. Did you ever do that in trade training?
Yeah, we did.
I remember Watersham. I don't remember Neatishead, because we literally drank.
We did Neatishead. We did Watersham.
Watersham Neatishead. We drank. Now, it was encouraged as a 17-year-old. You were never told off for underage drinking. It was almost encouraged that you, Blades, why aren't you drinking? Are you sick? Get drinking.
Yeah.
And that full trip, we were legless, absolutely legless for the full 2-day trip. It was unbelievable. Wow. And like I said, Di Dempsey and Mal O'May, cracking. What a great introduction to the RAF, that they were your trade training. There. You know, honestly, absolute fucking comedy show. Absolute comedy show for, the old book, secret lessons. You could find more out by reading a newspaper than what you learned in the secret lessons. It was, and they used to come out with a bullshit spray. Did you get that on trade training?
No, I don't remember that. Shall we talk about your next song before I show? There's another comment which I will bring up, once we talk about the Who in 5:15, because it'll maybe just follow on quite nicely.
Okay, so the Who 5:15. I met a guy, not like that. I met a guy at West Drayton, and we got on really, really well. And then I didn't see him again until RAF Ash when we went to do the further training, when we went from one piece of kit to the next piece of kit.
Yeah.
And this guy introduced me to the album Quadrophenia by The Who and the movie. Yeah. And it was Jim Horn. Now, Dave Large knows Jim Horn very, very well. And anybody that's met Jim Horn, you will know.
Andy Holmes.
Yeah, you will and Andy Holmes. And there was some great guys at RAF Ash. I mean, Dave Cowley was down there, Davey Large. See, Andy Holmes, Ash. Honestly, Stu Green is fantastic people. And the RAF had a really good habit of putting RAF bases next to summer holiday places. And when we went to RAF Ash, so it's Manston and it was Margate and Ramsgate.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And if you remember them courses, you did day shifts and night shifts, but the night shifts you were finished by, I think, 9 o'clock. So everybody's just out on the lash. And honestly, Jim Horn at Ash, he used to come up and start pretending to cut. Now, I'd just come down and hadn't seen Jim for a long time. And all I feel is somebody get in the chair behind me, the chair that I'm sat in, and start pretending to cut my hair. Yeah. And I turn round. And what Jim Horn used to have a really good thing of doing is miming words to you. So if he said hello, he wouldn't actually say hello. He'd mime it. And it used to be quite a creepy thing. But what a great guy to go out and have a drink with. The amount of women that used to try and beat him up and throw him through shop windows because he'd upset them. Honestly, he was such good fun, Jim Horn. But imagine being an AC at 17, meeting Jim Horn. It was just an unbelievable experience. And it was him that introduced me to Quadrophenia and the Who. And He used to let me, I used to go back to, when we came back to Buchan, I used to go back to Ash to go and see somebody. And Jim used to let me stay in his room all the time and he'd move out. So really nice bloke. Lost contact after Ash. We sort of, again, after West Drayton, we lost contact. We saw each other at Ash.
Yeah.
And then after Ash, he sort of drifted. I don't think Jim stayed in much longer after that. Andy Holmes and Dave Large will be able to tell you, but I don't think he stayed in much longer after that.
I was on watch with him for a while at Neatishead.
Oh well, he must have stayed in longer than what I thought then.
Yeah, because we had quite a few nights out in the waterfront at Neatishead. Jim was quite partial to the waterfront. Yeah, guys are asking about Ash. Mr. Fairclough said X. Mo's asking about day trip to Calais. Did you do one of the day trips to Calais? I remember. No. Yeah, I remember going on one and getting into an awful state.
No, I didn't do one. I tell you what, there was enough to do at RAF Ash, or enough to do around Manston, Ramsgate, Margate. I used to like Whitstable as well, and all around there. There was some great pubs, great restaurants around there.
Yeah,
but again, if you think of where all of our bases are, they're all in friggin' Stacks and Wold. It used to be fucking Scarborough. It's another seaside town, you know. You've got Bulmer in Alnwick, which is another holiday destination. So the RAF can only blame itself that we all became absolute hooligans and drinkers because they put us in that situation, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times though. Good times, mate.
Oh, honestly. If I remember rightly, and Andy might be able to say, I'm sure Andy Holmes at Buchan when we got there and then left.
I think I am almost certain that he was there and left very, very soon after we arrived.
Because it seemed to be sort of like all of us young ones arrived, and people that had been at Buchan for like a year, 2 years, they were like your likes of Jez Lawton.
Yeah,
they were all like moved out, and then sort of like we were like the next wave to come in.
Yeah, I'm sure Andy was there briefly, but because it was I arrived in January of 1990, and you were February, weren't you?
Yeah. So I got to West Drayton just before December, and then of course there was the Christmas holidays.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't 8 weeks. I think mine was 10 weeks because of the 2 weeks off. And
yeah, there you go. Look, no, we just missed him.
Just missed him. Okay. Yeah. But obviously his name, obviously used to hear the name Spike all the time, Spike. So there was a lasting impression. But training, there was only 6 of us that qualified, and 5 of us went to Buchan and 1 went to Neatishead.
Right. Who went to Neatishead?
Kathy Bourne went to Neatishead.
Yeah.
Myself, Pat Malloy, Bev Arnold, Lisa Whittaker, Helen Wormold all went to Buchan.
Crikey, yeah.
And I put in for Buchan because you'd gone to Buchan. Because we'd got on so well. You were like, come up to Buchan. I didn't even know where the fuck Peterhead was. It was a different planet for me.
I don't think a lot of people did. And I don't think a lot of people had a choice.
And I remember...
A lot of people didn't want to go. A lot of people did want to go because they'd heard it was the place to be posted to. And of course, I just put it down because it was Scottish. Simple. I was like, yeah, I'll have some of that. But I had no idea. I don't think anybody.
I just remember arriving at Newton Farm Lodge and just thinking, where the fuck am I? What is this? You know?
Porter cabins.
They would not pass any quality test whatsoever these days, would they? You know?
Do you know, the thing is, when we left them, they didn't even end their life there. I remember that the Air Force sold them to some company in Spain or something. I'm almost certain.
Oh, it's some sort of fucking Heidi High Butlins holiday camp now for... but do you know what? What a great NFL... most of my memories from Buchan are at NFL. We had such a great... You've got a group of about 20, 30, 17, 18, 19-year-olds all living together. Yeah. What could possibly go wrong? You know?
I know. There you go. Pob's hit the nail on the head. End of the world, turn left.
Oh, it's, you know, and especially when, of course, I'd met Scottish people before, but I'd never met Peterheadians before. And I just thought they were speaking, I thought, I'm definitely in a foreign country. Couldn't understand a word half of them were saying, you know? So, but
it got easier though, didn't it?
Oh, it got easier, yeah. And like, I know, I think Steve, when he was saying his podcast, he didn't quite like Peterhead. I thought Peterhead was great. I thought there was some great little, but not like the main bars. There was some bars out the back, and even the British Legion, I used to like going in there and having a couple of beers. So, but a funny story about, so I got there in February. In the summer of 1990, it was World Cup Italia.
Yeah.
And everybody loved Marigold, who worked in the NAFI. Marigold looked after everybody, right? So Marigold puts on the Italian night. So it's going to be Italian food, Italian drinks. But being the RAF, it's not quite what it seems. So the Italian food, of course, was just pizzas. The Italian drinks was wine served in pint glasses. Yeah. And it was for the semi-final against West Germany against England, when all the Scots were wearing the West Germany kits. So yeah. Kev McLaughlin and quite a few, they all went out and bought the West Germany kits. I don't even think I got to the end of the match. 17 and a half, drinking pints of wine. It was, and that was the sort of thing, you know, encouraged to, I think there were only about 40 pence as well for a pint of wine.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
And it was the good stuff. I think it was like Blue Nun or...
Blue Nun.
It was Blue Nun, or it was Lieb Framil or something like that. You know, the real... You know when you squint when you drink it? It was real... Yeah.
Mr. Camsey's, I think, his good lady wife.
I think that's you, not me.
I think it's you, mate.
I think that's more you, but no. But no, that obviously we digress there. But no, 5:15. It was all about Jim Horn. He gave me And again, back then it wasn't CDs. He gave me a tape of Quadrophenia.
Yeah.
And there isn't one song on that album that's not. It's fantastic.
Brilliant. Whilst we're talking about Newton Farm Lodge, and then obviously we moved down to like the new site. I don't know where, but I think that your next song, I think, is kind of related to. Well, I don't know. It's around that time anyway. But it's Depeche Mode, World in My Eyes.
Yeah, World in My Eyes, and obviously 1980, 1990. Around that, it was all like the big rave scene. It was like acid house and rave. And of course, I was getting brainwashed into that sort of music. And Mark Osborne, I met him in the corridor. And if you remember that block that we were in, did you say it was called Flamingo Block?
Yeah.
So when you walked in, you had the foyer area, didn't you? And it was like an L shape that we had. And Oz, it was like B Watch were down one and A Watch was down another.
So Flamingo Block was at NFL.
NFL was Islay Block or one of those, wasn't it?
We were in Orkney Block.
Orkney.
Yeah.
And Oz handed me a CD. By then it was CDs, and of course we'd been down to was it Curry's or whatever with the old Lombardtricity? Yeah, I'll have the biggest stereo, the biggest television. Oh, it's £2 a month for the rest of your life. Keep me out. Keep me. People's speakers were like this in the room, and he gave me Depeche Mode Violator, and again, it changed my outlook on music. I sort of went off that real sort of hardcore rave.
Yeah,
and got in, and it led to me going to see Depeche Mode around. I've seen them 3 times now in different locations, and it was like my love. It's like I didn't really listen to them in the 80s, so it wasn't until Oz had given me that CD. And the thing with Oz is he was B-Watch, and I didn't really have a connection with Oz. I'd seen him around and things, and it wasn't until he gave that we started to get to know each other and speak a bit more. Yeah. So, but ever since that point, I'd Depeche Mode all the way.
Depeche Mode. So what sort of other stuff were you listening to when that came along? Like
all this shite rave music, yeah. The real, it's like my son's 15. All you hear from his room is that's what it was like. So I think what Oz had done is just said this. He obviously needs educating, this guy. He needs to listen a bit more, and he gave me that CD, and that's when I started to branch out a bit more with my music. So
you did quite a lot of the raves though, with like Ali, didn't you, and Alf?
We used to. I went on one with Hammy. We stayed at Hammy's house, and it was a daytime one. And the other person we used to go to on every Sunday was with Doc and Rob Halstead. Yeah, and we used to go to, there was like the Hoochie Coochie bar in Aberdeen, and there was another one. I think it was the Ministry of Sin. And on a Sunday they used to put on, and we used to go, and the guys used to go dressed up in their NBC suits and wear the masks and really get into it. And it was like, I think that's why Oz went, you need some education. You need to get away from that sort of music.
Look at people like sticking Vicks on their balls and stuff like that as well.
That did happen, yeah. And they used to have the Vicks. Used to take Pro Plus, which is just a caffeine, and get the Vicks inhalers.
Yeah.
I think the only thing it did is we never had a cold. It didn't do anything else other than just prevent a cold. That was it.
But was it that scene that not also provoked the use of fishing lights inside your mouth?
Yeah. We've got some there that the kids play with parties, like long ones. But yeah, you used to get the small fishing lights, and people would snap them and they glow, and then for 12 hours. But no, we went.
Do you remember us wearing them one night in the Granada?
If you remember, Granada went through quite a ravey scene on the Friday night. It used to get quite ravey, and the 2,000 watts of power, and people started to. I think a lot of people from Peterhead had never ventured out of Peterhead, So they'd selling beer in a paddling pool. That was very strange at RAF Buchan. The amount of people that were from the Middlesbrough area that when I went up there.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you who else. And I was on the phone to him 2 weeks ago.
The G, 2,000 watts.
Another person that you mentioned, from Middlesbrough.
Yeah,
I was on the phone to him 2 weeks ago. Alan Didlick, Dids.
So there was, when I got up there was Sarah Payne.
Yeah.
Gabs.
Alf, Gabs.
Alfie. There was
Billy
Did.
Kershaw.
There was myself. There was, who else was up there? I've written
my good lady wife.
Your good lady wife. Mike Piers, who I mentioned. Lee and Debbie Hardy were both from Billingham. Ross Darlington.
Yeah.
He was in Middlesbrough as well. So there's like quite a collection.
Yeah, quite a few.
So it just goes to show you how much fucking prospects there was in Middlesbrough. Everybody was getting out of Dodge. Fuck this, we're out of here. Huh?
So, whilst we're talking about Middlesbrough, got to ask you this question. What's your favourite Parmo?
Okay, there's a place out in Great Broughton, Swainby Way, that does the Inferno Parmo. So it's obviously with the chilies on the top.
And where? Broughton?
Yeah, no, Great Broughton, not Broughton.
Oh, Great Broughton. Right, okay.
That's full of fucking sheep shaggers, Broughton. That's just woolly backs. My good lady wife's gonna have some. I'm glad she's over there, not here. She'd be duffing me up with that. But I actually saw you. Yeah, Ian was there as well. I was speaking to Ian recently about the football. So, but no, I think there's there was three choices in Middlesbrough. It was either British Steel, ICI, or you leave, you get out.
Yeah.
So, and an awful lot of people took the get out option. They didn't want to go and work in a steel, and they didn't want to go and work in a chemical factory.
Yeah. So what was your reasoning?
I was an air cadet, and
so you knew
from the age of 13, I wanted nothing more than to be in the RAF.
Right.
Yeah, even when I went into the careers at school, they were saying the options are no interest.
Yeah.
And then when I got into the RAF, I realised maybe I should have gone to ICI or British Steel. So it was a wasted 4 years of thinking. Yeah, I'm going to anyway. That's another story. That so.
What are your kind of good memories? Because you had how long did you have at Buchan then? Was it about
3?
Was it 3 years?
3.
Was it?
Yeah. 3 years. Then I went to Spade Adam, and then I went to High Wycombe. Right.
Okay. So what was your favourite tour?
All 3 have got pluses. Yeah, there's only Buchan really that had like the minuses. Yeah, because working in that CRC environment, it has its pitfalls, its downfalls. But Spade Adam was a boys' club. It was just no waffs allowed because we used to do a lot of deployments out with the techies. So it was just, and obviously it was a low flying range, so it was like an air show every day. And High Wycombe, you were there at the same time. It was fucking carnage, that place. It was just, that was off the chart, that place. You know, the job at High Wycombe was a fucking joke. EAS, whoever invented that job, I still don't understand what I was doing. But then I went into the television studio, which was fun. You know, Ian Pluck, Paul Gittins, unbelievable. You know, golf on Wednesdays, Friday afternoons off, fantastic. You know?
Yeah, you did, didn't you? You were always out early on a Friday.
Yeah, Spade Adam was good because we were on deployments all the time, so we were always stuck in the middle of in the middle of Kielder. On a radar, in your boxer shorts, barbecuing, drinking beer, and then a week at a time doing that. That was brilliant.
Yeah. So you went to Wickham, and then you left, right?
Yeah, 2000 came out, yeah.
So what would you say? What would you say is the or not maybe the biggest, because I'm sure that you learned a lot, but what would you say is the most valuable lesson that you learned when you were in the Air Force?
That's a good one. Obviously, I'll be honest, I took nothing away, because I actually went from that environment to working by myself without a team. So I couldn't take any of that skill set that I had. Now, I was only in the RAF for 10 years, yeah? And slowly my interest went off and off and off. So what did I actually... I could sit here and bullshit you about, yeah, teamwork and camaraderie and, you know, but it's very difficult to answer that for me. I didn't know you were going to throw that one in, to be honest. Yeah. Well, you know, Trade Group 12 is a very, very specialized job that there's little you can actually take away into the civilian world, right? It's not like you can walk into that sort of job in the civilian world, unless you're aircrew and you end up going on to FRA, which are hearing teas and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I could get up in the morning after a heavy night. I could iron a shirt. Yeah. I could polish my shoes when I could be bothered. So
yeah. So I mean, things like discipline, and having to be like, the sense of, I was about to say a sense of reliability. I'm not sure how you feel about that one. There must be a number of things that you think stood you in good stead when you left.
When I left, having those three initials on my CV, RAF, I have never, ever, ever been out of work. All right?
Right.
Never. People would prefer somebody coming from a military background, because they know whatever state you're in the night before, you're at work the next day. You're showered, you're shaved, you're ready. Okay. A student coming out, they come with a reputation of lounging around, not doing so much. So that, okay, I could take 10 years of saying it's military experience. Some of that is not applicable out in the real world, huh?
Yeah. And I think, I think perhaps you're doing yourself a disservice there, because what I've seen, and we've both been out for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And I see, obviously, people coming out at different sides of the spectrum. So there are people coming out and they're very, very scared, and they're very worried about how they're going to be able to transition and underplay the experience that they actually have gained, because when you spend a lot of time in, even managing kind of small projects and being able to coordinate things, and kind of, like you say, having to deliver things, having the pressures of time put on you, and having to get right first time, all of these things are massively important. And some people come out and they don't recognize that. But there's also people at the other end of the spectrum that I've come across that come out and think that they're Billy Big Balls, and that they're just going to go straight into a job, and that they're going to set the world on fire. That's why
you're wrapped up in cotton wool a lot in the Air Force. Okay, so you're saying about delivering and things like that. Like when I worked in the television studio, yes, there was time scales, but there was no real pressure. Not like pressure when you're out in Civvy Street, realizing that if you don't get it right, there is somebody behind you that will take your job quite easily, right? Yeah. So Civvy Street, the pressures, I would say, is a lot more than being in that environment. And don't forget those first couple of years when we were young and we were just arsing about.
Yeah, that's true.
There was no real worry about, oh, I'm going to get thrown out, or I'm not going to get paid this month, or they're going to kick me out of my accommodation. I'm not going to get fed. So you are really right. And I think that's one of the hardest transitions about coming out of military and going into civilian is you lose that, you would lose that protection that you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The structure there, I mean, I talk about it. You know, I left because I wanted freedom from it. That was what I, you know, that's what I strived for, having freedom to be able to do what I wanted when I wanted. You know, we were similar. We didn't really like being, even after 10 years, didn't really like being told what to do. You know, managed to play the game a little bit better towards the end, but it was like I left for the freedom, but then the freedom was a bit too much. And it can be for some people. It's like, you know, all that freedom, don't know what to do with it. You know, no structure, and all of a sudden you're not being told what to do.
Yeah, like you said, but you're still structured, aren't you? You still know you've got to get up in the morning. You still know you've got to go smart. You still got to be, you know, you've got to present yourself well. You can't just sort of fall off the scales. But I left for a different reason. I left for financial reasons, okay? And what it was, if you recall, when we were at High Wycombe, when we were on the shift pattern, a lot of people worked a second job. So a lot of people either worked at Avis or Target, and they were earning extra money. So you were getting £300-400 extra. Then when I went into the studio, I lost that, but I relied on it. So if you recall, I ended up doing a paper round. Me and Neil Wilkinson were doing paper rounds at the ages of 27 to supplement. To supplement what we were getting, because we'd obviously been used to this extra money. And then you may recall early on that I was talking about, there was 2 Dan Pearces in the RAF. Yeah. And the tall Dan Pearce left to work in London. And I remember him coming to High Wycombe in his Lotus, nice suit. And I just thought, that's me. I've got to get out. I'm going to struggle if I stay in the Air Force. And that's why I PVR'd and came out the Air Force, because financially it didn't make sense for me to stay in and do 12 years.
Right. Okay. That was going to be my next question about why you asked. Remind me, what was because I remember this. In fact, I remember meeting your boss,
Jason,
in the first job that you got after you left. And the reason I remember him is because he rocked up it was like around that time he rocked up. You brought him on. Did you bring him into the Corporals Club?
No, I had a party
in your house.
I had a party at the house, yeah. And I think
that's it. He had a party at the house, and I remember going in and meeting him, and he had like a pair of moccasins on and no socks. And I was like, my God, you can't be doing that well if you can't even afford a pair of socks.
Oh, Jason
that was cool, apparently.
He was a typical London boy, you know, that he had the nice car, he had the nice shirts, jeans rolled up. I wasn't interested in any of that. But I came out of the Air Force to fucking be a photocopier salesman, right? Photocopiers. Do you know how hard it is to sell photocopiers to people that have got photocopiers, right? So there's all the promise of you can make big money. And Dan Pearce, tall Dan Pearce, he was selling fax lines in London. Right. So I thought, like, if he can do that, I can do this. Within 2 months of becoming a photocopier salesman, I was creaming it. I was making money. And the reason I was making money is they had 2 offices, one in Hounslow near Heathrow Airport and one in Banbury. But the one in Banbury had all the engineers in. And I learned very quickly that if I took donuts to those guys and was nice to them, they would tell me all the photocopiers that were on the blink. So I would then phone them up and say, I think you need a new photocopier. Get their contracts and see what they were paying.
Yeah.
Do a deal. And these lads were going, fucking hell, you've only been doing this for 2 months. How are you doing this? It's because I was pushed up there with all the engineers, and they were giving me all the information of who had a shit photocopier. So I think after the third or the fourth month, I was salesman of the month, and everybody's looking like, fucking who's this superstar? No. Donuts. Give the fucking techies donuts. Quids in.
Oh, brilliant. Mr. Hamilton's in, saying good evening as well.
I used to enjoy having a beer with Hammy and Mark James. I used to enjoy. What was the name of the pub when you came out of the gate at Bodham and you turned left? And it was We used to go and play cards in there with Hammy and Mark James. Yeah.
Mark James used to drink in the Roxley all the time.
Yeah. I think he had his own seat and his own cup in there, like his own pot in there as well, you know. And that was a proper sawdust bar, that one. That was, you know,
I remember
in London, you know, you made me miss the dartboard. That's a place.
Yeah, it was. There you go. Yeah, Hammy remembers the Roxley.
Yeah. And Hammy, back in his day, he could fucking put some tenants down him. He could drink. And I mean, when we used to go on day sessions after our first night shift, I think Hammy was always the last man standing. Always. Yeah.
Toasties pulling darts.
Yeah.
Do you know, that's interesting because there were a few guys that did the Roxley. I always remember that the B-Watch guys always did they always did a place in Cruden Bay. There was and Paul Langdon would need to remember, because they were pals with the guy that owned the boozer in Cruden Bay, and they used to rock up off nights to Cruden Bay. It was a pub across the road from the golf course, and they would be like standing out knocking on the door at 11 o'clock, and this guy would be like, hold on, I'll be down in a minute. They would off nights, have some breakfast, shower and change, out knocking on the door.
Right. So we were young, very young. And obviously, your corporals are there to supposed to guide you, right? Paul Clayfield, Taff Langdon, Trev Graham, fucking Dave Pearce, right? Fraser Watt. The only place they used to stay to is, where are we going drinking tonight? You know? and like I said, I never got into trouble for underage drinking, but I did get into trouble if I wasn't in the bar where I was supposed to be drinking. And, you used to get complaint. Where were you last night? I had a quiet night. What do you mean you had what's wrong with you? Fucking no. You know? And it was honestly, and I've told you the story about what I think about binge drinking. I think binge drinking was invented by the RAF. You know, anybody that has like an AOC's inspection and then suddenly decides to put on twofers for everybody, so 2 drinks for the price of 30 pence, they're just asking for trouble, aren't they?
Yeah.
But
there you go. The Fairways was the pub there you go. Mo's said in there, the Fairway. Yeah. Crikey. Yeah. Liam was the landlord, apparently.
And I was surprised with Mo's story saying that he was actually at Bishop's Court, but he just used to come to Buchan. I thought he was at Buchan and he had one of these secret jobs.
I did. I thought the same. I thought he was actually posted there. I mean, talking to him a couple of weeks ago and was saying, you weren't actually posted at that time. Nope. We just used to come to visit.
He used to be out drinking every Friday and Saturday night, so I just thought he was part of the furniture. I thought he was at RAF Buchan.
Oh, crazy. So after you left, that was obviously in when was it?
So I came out officially February 2000, but I actually left before Christmas because of leave and resettlement and things like that. So yeah.
So and in that time, so in that sort of that time frame, just as a bit of a line, so around the kind of 2000-ish. Now, social media, and I remember this because it kind of frequently pops up. Social media became a bit of a thing in around about 2007, and Facebook kind of started, and a lot of so there was a kind of period where a lot of people lost touch. I started, I guess, around 2007, 2008, starting to kind of reconnect with a number of people on Facebook. But you weren't around then. In fact, you weren't around for kind of quite a while after that as well. You made like a bit of a sort of flying appearance. And I remember speaking to you a few times on social media, and then all of a sudden it was like, as we would say in the trade, your response was gone. You went off the radar.
Yeah.
So what happened?
You're right. About 2007, I think, is Facebook seemed to take off.
Yeah.
And we seem to get into this habit of just fucking adding any old person as a friend, right? So people that you might have stood next to in the fucking chip shop, you're like, oh, yeah, I'll add you to Facebook, you know. And then, you know. But there was a thing where, of course, a lot of RAF people, I think it even goes a step before, if you remember, with things like Friends Reunited.
Yeah.
And then obviously Facebook coming. And what it was, I was working in the south of France. I was in Marseille, and I'd posted something about having a good day. And I got some really negative comments like, oh, well, fucking why are you having a great time? Yeah, I do that. He's right. I drift in and drift out. And I got really negative comments. And then I started to look at the names that I had on there. And out of the 500, 550 I had on there, I probably only knew about 30 people. And I thought, fuck yeah. And I just cut it off. I cut Facebook off and I went radar silent. I thought, that's it. Because I'd been posting some nice things, where I've been doing, what I've been doing. And people were there was some really negative comments. And I thought, I don't need it. I don't need negative. I don't want it. So I got rid of it. And I've got Facebook back, but I've only got about 30 people on there. And it's majority family. So when I am away working, they can see what I'm up to and things like that. So it was nothing that, oh, fuck you, I'm not interested. It was just one or two people spoiled it with the negative. Yeah, I thought you were all fucking pricks. And I just thought at the end of 2000, I thought that chapter's closed. Fucking see you later, not interested. But no, I even went to an RAF reunion, which was, Spike will tell you if Andy Holmes is still on, was an absolute fucking disaster, because we met up with all the guys, the Die guys. So it was Taff Langdon, Dave Barber, Dave Pike, Andy O'Hare, me and Spike. And we turned up about 6 hours after them, and they were absolutely cattled. I don't even think Dave Barber left the hotel because he was so drunk. And me and Spike ended up, Newcastle. And we only went to one pub. It was the train station. And me and Andy left after about an hour because the amount of you just couldn't understand what was being said.
You might not know this. Karen and I were actually supposed to go to that. And we had a hotel booked. And we had to cancel at last minute because I had to take her to the dentist for emergency problems with her teeth, because it wasn't it. Yeah, I remember it well. So my
understanding was this was supposed to be a big, massive trade group 12 reunion.
Yeah.
When I walked into that railway bar, I think it's called, in Newcastle, there was like 6 people, right? And 4 of them were completely arseholed, and it was like, oh, what is this? Andy had come all the way from
Dublin.
Yeah, you come all the way from where?
From Dublin.
No, I don't think it was that far. It was West Country somewhere, some Manchester area, something like that.
Oh, Andy Holmes. Sorry, I'm going to say Andy O'Hare would be over from Ireland, wouldn't he?
Yeah, what fucking, and that's sort of like, I thought, 3 Group 12 reunions left a little bit of a sour taste. That. So, see, like Paul Langdon saying Stoke, that's how drunk he was. It was Newcastle.
I think that they've had a number of those reunions, though, quite frequently as well. So, but listen, last song. Before we kind of go, the last song. Yeah. I'm really interested in this last song, because it's a bit dark. It's a bit of a darker one, and not a band that I was into at the time, and a bit different. I didn't know that you listened to these. So it's The Mission that you've gone for, and Tower of Strength. Tell us what the story with that one is.
It's exactly what you've just said. It's that dark song. It's that whenever I was feeling a little bit low, a little bit down, especially at booking, and towards the end of booking, it kind of affected me, and that's how I managed to get out. I managed to get out of booking within 2 weeks. This was a song that I went to, and if you actually listen to the words about the Tower of Strength, it was just a song that's, even though you say it's dark, it kind of picks you back up. It's quite an upbeat, dark song.
Yeah.
And I think Dave Large as well. I think he used to listen to this as well. I think I thought Dave Large used to like it, but it might have been Dave Ash that I'd heard it from, because I'd never listened to that music before.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those songs when I was feeling a bit, like I said, towards the end of booking for me, it was quite a difficult time. I had to get out, and that song just used to put that spring back in your step. I know if you listen to it first, it doesn't sound like it, but it did. It put that spring just back in your step and got me back on a level ground. So,
yeah. There you go.
But no.
I had listened to it tonight as well. Like I say, not one that I listened a lot to, but I had listened to it tonight. I remember a lot of folk that were into the Mission, but not one that I listened to a lot. But I'd listened to it tonight and thought, yeah, it's like you say, and I remember a lot of people used to listen to Radiohead for the very same reason. They'd listen to Radiohead to cheer themselves up, and I never used to get that. I'd be like, you listen to Radiohead to cheer yourself up?
Jim Stevenson, OK Computer. That's what I remember. You could name people in the RAF, and I could give you a song. Hammy's on about that. Me and Hammy were very fortunate. We managed to get tickets to go and see Leeds at Leeds Roundhay Park, Genesis and Lisa Stansfield and Runrig. And Hammy wasn't always the slim chap that he used to be, right? And Hammy, and I obviously wasn't. I think me and Hammy have reversed roles, so he's now. But Hammy was on my fucking shoulders for listening to the full Lisa Stansfield concert, yeah. So, and we were right at the front, and that took its toll on me. I had to sit at the side for the Genesis gig after that. But yeah, that was a good night. Yeah. So you're going on about Runrig there. It wasn't until I got to Peterhead that I got into all of these Scottish bands. I'd never heard Hue and Cry I'd heard of, some, but like the likes of Runrig, and when that used to come on and the whole place would just go absolute fucking, what's this?
They would go nuts, wouldn't they?
And the other thing I remember about booking was Scottish football, the Old Firm game, how guys who were friends up until the Saturday and then they would just divide, and of course you got, I think you got 6 games a year, didn't you? Played three each, home and away. So for 6 times, they wouldn't fucking speak to each other. They wouldn't even, and a few people, when they'd had a big drink and stuff like that, there was things said. I couldn't believe that. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. It's all coming out now.
No, the early days for me, booking the early days was fantastic. Fantastic. Because you said to me, the one thing that I've always missed about the Air Force is the social life. The social life, you couldn't go wrong, There was never a moment you couldn't find somebody to go for a drink with. There was never a moment that you could not play a sport, football, cricket, rugby, And I think a lot of people, when they leave the military, that's the thing they miss the most, is that social aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we might get you along to some kind of get together at some point then, maybe.
I was meant to come to Belfast last year, and I apologise. I ended up going to America instead, and working. So yeah, we'll have to get this. Let's get this pandemic out of the way. Let's get everybody jabbed up. Let's get everybody safe. Then let's get everything back on track again.
Yeah. We'll definitely sort something out. Absolutely. But you have travelled a fair bit since you left the Air Force, haven't you?
Yeah.
Probably travelled an awful lot more since you left than when you were in, right?
I went fucking nowhere with the Air Force. I was one of the. I tell you what, I was in Portland, Maine, and I was working with a young lad, and he had all the stickers on his car about the military, and he'd been in the Marines for 5 years. And I told him I was in the Air Force for 10. And he's like, oh, okay, you know, thank you for your service. And it's like, whoa, hang on a minute. You don't know what the fuck I did. In his 5 years as a Marine, he'd been to Afghanistan 3 times. I went to the Falklands for 4 months. That was it. Oh, and I went to Tenby in Wales to fire some plastic missiles at planes. So when I got sent my badge to say our HM Forces veteran, and I was like, 5 years as a Marine and 3 tours in Afghanistan, 10 years in the RAF, and you went to Tenby in Wales. Am I a veteran? Or you know, I was like, oh, you know. So yeah, I didn't do much traveling in the RAF.
Right. So tell me. I know that of all of the places that you went to, and we've spoken about a few of them recently. Yeah. About your time out in the States. I remember you telling me about some of the time you spent in the Bahamas, but what I don't know about is Amsterdam 2010. Obviously, I'm on a bit of a big fitness drive at the moment as well. Yeah. And in 2010, you were going to run did run the Amsterdam Marathon.
There was no going to. I did run. So I was in the south of France and I trained for 4 months. And what it was, I was on holiday and we met a couple, got quite pally with him. He was big into running, had big friends in the London Marathon. I was 38 at the time and I went, I'm going to do fucking 10 marathons before the time I'm 40. Right? That was before I ran my first ever marathon. Right? The number 26 is a small number. Trust me, 26 miles is it's not a small number. Okay. So I trained, and the reason we chose Amsterdam, it's flat. So
and you could have coffee afterwards, right?
I'll tell you, we did go out the night after the marathon, but I could hardly walk. And I trained for this marathon. I trained. And for the first 13 miles, I was flying. I did it in 90 minutes. Now that puts you onto a 3-hour marathon, that's pretty good going, right? And I don't know if you've ever ran, but you get like an electronic tag that you put on your shoe.
Yeah.
And at the 13-mile point, there's a line which it times you at 13.
Yeah.
Something happened to me after that line because I got marathon Tourette's after that. And I vowed for the next 13 miles that I would never, ever, ever run a fucking marathon again. And I kept saying it. And one of the worst things they do on running is they give you your number and your name. Yeah. So people are going, come on, Paul. That last 13 miles, I was cursing everybody. Shut fuck you. What do you mean? Fucking you come and do this, right? and the last 13, so the second stage, the 30, I did in 3 hours. So I ended up with a time of 4 hours 30. I was really slow. What makes matters worse is in Amsterdam, you have to finish in a stadium and everybody's clapping. So you come into the centre of the stadium, run round. So you run around the bend. So it's almost like 250 meters. The last 100 meters, I'm on the last straight. I thought I'll pick up a bit of energy. Fucking Zorro runs past me, a guy in a cape, a fucking, you know, he's got his cape, his mask on, a sword, and fucking beats me. I've just done 4.5 hours running, cursing and swearing to get pipped by Zorro. I took my medal and went, you can stick the other 9. And after that, I was like, and I didn't run for about 2 years after that. I went, I'm not doing that. I'm done. Had enough. And anybody thinking of running a marathon, don't do it. It's fucking agonizing. It's awful. Stick to 10Ks. That's comfortable. But on the night time, we went out and we had a great night in Amsterdam. So, and the next day I fly to London to get a visa for Amsterdam. For Vietnam. I nearly missed the flight. I nearly missed everything. So. So
I absolutely love that.
Just be careful what you say before, 10 marathons. Nah.
So that was that.
one and done, and it was nearly half and done, and it was just that I had to get. I struggled on that last 13 miles. I really did. And what they have on the marathons, they have guys, they have pacemakers, so they have a time. So 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and if you follow them, then it'll give you a good time.
Yeah,
I went up, Billy. You said Billy Big Balls. That was me at that marathon. Fucking here we go. I can do this. Fucking car crash. Second.
Oh, brilliant! Listen, I've had a great time, and we could spend all night here as well. We're at 9:15. I've got one more question.
I've got loads to go through. No, I'm joking now.
Look, Hammy said no Eddie Izzard, the Blades man. Then,
well, I tell you what, Eddie Izzard, 30. What he just did there, even on a treadmill.
I know.
That takes some doing. And if you watch Eddie Izzard when he does the ones in Africa, he had to stop halfway through because his body was just like, "What are you doing to me?"
I mean, how many did he do over there? Was it about 40 or something?
Yeah, because what you've got is it called the Comrades, which is where you run in the African desert and you do something like I think it's something like 28 marathons in 28 days. Not just the thought of running the marathons, you've then got fucking lions and fucking rhinoceroses and hippopotamuses, and you're like, that is the ultimate.
Hardcore. Well, listen, before we go, I just have to ask one more question, and it's not the one that I normally ask, because you've answered a number of questions that have kind of shown how you apply your kind of JFDI.
Yeah.
But this last question relates to something that we both JFDI'd a number of years ago, but I can't remember whose idea was it to get those fucking scooters.
I think there was 3 of us that went to Aberdeen that day, right? So there was me, you, and I think it might have been Guy, Alfie. Yeah. But 2 of us came back. Now, as young men with nothing else to spend their money on, I think we just saw these scooters gleaming in the shop and thought, that's what we need to go from the naffy to the block. Yeah. Now, it obviously raised a lot of eyebrows at the time that why are these men that are serving in the military riding around on children's scooters? So,
do you remember where they went? Was it not Dougie Manson's kids that got them or something?
I would imagine it was somebody's children, yeah. And let's be honest, quite rightly so. So,
but did we not say, "Oh, you can have them, but you're going to have to put the brakes on"? Because did we not take the brakes off them?
I think we did. And if you remember back then as well, the shell suit was in fashion. So not only were we on scooters, but we were riding around in these awful shell suits as well. With I could see the curtains twitching in those NFL blocks. They must have just thought, "What a fucking pair of idiots these two are."
And many of the people watching tonight will probably remember that exactly themselves.
Yeah,
what a pair of idiots!
No, but you know what? You joined up. You're young. I'd never left home before I joined that, and then you're thrown in. It was like Butlins on steroids, NFL, right? It was just one big, massive party all the time. Yeah. So it was inevitable somebody was going to get scooters. It just had to be me and you. That's all it was.
Bro, I love it. Listen, hang around in the old green room.
Yes.
Thank you so much indeed for that tonight. I've had an absolute blast.
Listen, it's been really nice to see all the people flashing up. Obviously, there's a lot of memories. We didn't even touch on people like Yvette Winterbottom and Joe Townsend when we used to tape them to tables and leave them for 6 hours on night shifts. So we've obviously glossed over them sort of stories, haven't we?
That's probably best, isn't it?
Back in 1990, it was acceptable. I think these days it's off to jail. Do not, if you pass go, do not get you 200. So
I know. So, any final words for the folk that have tuned in?
Do you know what? Everybody that I've seen there, I've got I remember everybody. We had some great times, and a lot of those people are back from like the A-Watch days when we were young, and it was all good fun. You know, before I had to start taking it serious, and it got a bit boring. So.
Wonderful. Listen, thank you very much for coming on, for sharing the stories, for sharing the tunes, and anybody that pops over onto Instagram in a little bit, I will play one or two of those songs.
I think you should get one of these WREFs on to give their side of the stories, because they were just as bad as us boys, huh?
Well, do you know what? Who was it that that gave a big shout out to the girls recently? Who was it? Was it Mo?
Get Bernadette Perkins on here. I can only imagine that her stories will trump everybody's, even probably Andy Holmes. So
her name was mentioned. I have approached my good lady wife and asked her if she would spend some time on here with me. I mean, she's still watching. You can just imagine what she said to me. I think I've got more chance of getting both my daughters on. That might be a good one. People might no, or maybe not for me. Oh, there it is. Go on. One last story. Tell people what the deal with that is.
So we were drinking one night, and your good lady wife and my wife at the time made me up, and as you can see, with the makeup on, and then you decided to put it on a CD.
Did you have blue nail varnish on as well?
I did, yeah. And my daughter who's 10 asked me tonight if I was gay before, and I said to her I wasn't, but my boyfriend was. To which she just looked at me and thought, "What are you?" And then you could see a little mind ticking, and she's like, "So you're straight now, then?" And my wife just went, "You're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot." So.
Well, maybe I know that I've got my copy of that in here somewhere as well.
Yeah.
We'll maybe play a few. Do you want to read out a few of the tunes, a few of the songs that are on there?
So there's obviously like ABBA, Dancing Queen. You've got Wham, I'm Your Man. Village People, absolute classic. The Communards, Right Said Fred.
Oh yes.
The Club, Soft Cell, Erasure. Yeah. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Queen, I Want to Break Free. And one of my all-time favorites, It's Raining Men by the Weather Girls.
Yeah. My sister has come on. Fiona's come on. And do you know what? I think she's right. She said, has mum not got one too? I think that I was playing this when my mum and dad were over, and my mum said to me, oh, that's a good album. Can you do me a copy of it? I think she does have a copy of that. Maybe we should knock up the playlist, or let's sell the CDs. How much should we sell it for? A tenner?
I think we might have to give people. I think this is the sort of thing that you see in one of those, like the petrol station baskets, 99 pence. But I'll tell you, there's not one song on there that would not get me up on the dance floor, right?
Yeah.
So,
opinion is split, mate. Hammy says great tunes.
Absolutely.
Mr. Camsey says.
See, Mr. Camsey, obviously he doesn't know good music. There's 19 songs of absolute pleasure on this album, right?
Yeah. Well, here's what Karen thinks.
And she's probably right,
And on that note, she's probably right. Let's us two say goodnight.
And we didn't even touch on any of the Falkland stories. I've got a million of them, but we'll leave that for another time. So,
do you know what? I'm glad that there's a couple of people that haven't tuned in, because look, he made a comment at the start, and I'm going to just play this. Let him have the last word. He's been quiet. I think he's got a message for you.
I could tell you a story about me and that Dan Pierce about that, but I won't. because it'll embarrass it. It'll embarrass. He would have never made it to sergeant if I tell him the story. So,
I asked him if he would come on here as well, and he told me to fuck off. Could you imagine?
Do you know why he doesn't want to come on? Because it would just it would get him into so much more trouble. That's what it is, you know.
I know. Listen, thank you very much indeed, folks, for tuning in. It's been brilliant. Thank you for all your comments.
Still got it, I think.
Coming in to say hello. We will be back next week. And if you remember when all of this started over on Instagram last August, we started this with Mr. Alistair back. And next week, we're going to end this little section of the podcast by picking up with Mr. Back again. Really looking forward to it. So if you'd like to join us for more chat about tunes, and you can be guaranteed, as with you've seen with Paul tonight, there'll be a lot of thought has gone in to the songs, because Ali Back wasn't always Mr. Loft 55. He started off as so. What? Let's remind people of his DJ names. Do you remember he started off with? Was it Flex?
I remember we called him obviously Alski because of Normski and Dance Energy, didn't we? So yeah. Alski was a big one.
Then there was DJ Flex. Then there was DJ Funky Bass. Do you remember that?
I think I'd left by then. I think I was still with Ali when he had the 2 old turntables, and I think once he got his 1210s, that's when once he started to get professional.
Yeah.
You know, I used to like the old one when the fucking smoke would come out of it and we were trying to control the pitch on it and things. So that the good old days.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. So we're going to have Ali on next week. So tune in. We've broken the record tonight. I think Mo, we thought was long, an hour and a quarter. It would appear that we've been on almost an hour and a half, mate.
I didn't even tell the story about when I was OIC windsurfing at RAF Spade Adam. And people
anyway.
never achieved anything in the RAF. OIC windsurfing. So when you said what did I took that from the RAF. I become OIC windsurfing.
I love it. Well, let's windsurf off into the green room, and we'll.
All right. Bye bye to everybody. It was nice. And fucking Taff Langdon owes me a proper night out.